When my husband of 15 years built a secret family with our children's nanny while I planned our anniversary celebration, I smiled gracefully and played the perfect wife. 6 months later, as he stood in family court demanding custody of our twins while his pregnant mistress waited in the hallway, I handed the judge a manila envelope that would strip him of everything he thought he'd cleverly hidden from me. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. The betrayal that shattered my picture-perfect world didn't announce itself with dramatic confrontations or suspicious phone calls. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if this resonates with you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I have something truly shocking saved just for you. It arrived on an ordinary Wednesday morning in September, wrapped in the mundane routine of what I believed was an unshakable marriage built on love, trust, and shared dreams for our family's future. I was Valentina Ashworth, wife to successful architect Cameron Ashworth, mother to our beautiful 8-year-old twins Lily and James, and until that fateful morning, completely convinced that my life was everything a woman could dream of having. Our sprawling estate in the prestigious Willowbrook Hills sat on 5 perfectly manicured acres, a testament to Cameron's architectural brilliance and my careful cultivation of our family's image in the community. Cameron had left early for his firm, kissing my cheek with the same tender affection he'd shown throughout our marriage, his hand briefly resting on my silk robe as he whispered about how excited he was for our upcoming 15th anniversary celebration. The twins were already at Rosewood Academy, the elite private school where they excelled in academics and made friendships with children from the city's most influential families. Our nanny, 26-year-old Elena Rodriguez, had been with our family for 3 years, hired after an exhaustive search for someone who could provide the kind of sophisticated childcare that matched our lifestyle. She was beautiful in an understated way, with long dark hair that she always wore in a neat bun, intelligent brown eyes, and a warm smile that made both children adore her completely. Elena was more than just childcare help. She was practically part of our family. She lived in the converted carriage house on our property, joined us for family dinners when Cameron and I weren't entertaining clients, and had become someone I trusted completely with my most precious possessions, my children. During our family vacations to the Hamptons and our ski trips to Vermont, Elena would accompany us, helping manage the children, while Cameron and I enjoyed romantic dinners and couple time. Now the story moves toward its real conclusion, so stay with us and don't skip any part and don't fast forward. The next developments are incredibly compelling. I considered her a friend, someone who understood the demands of maintaining a high-profile family and who genuinely cared about Lily and James's well-being. When she'd mentioned feeling homesick for her family in Costa Rica, I'd arranged for her parents to visit during Christmas. When she'd expressed interest in taking college courses, Cameron and I had encouraged her education and adjusted her schedule to accommodate her studies. Our home life was everything I dreamed of when Cameron and I met during our graduate programs at Columbia University. He was pursuing his master's in architecture while I completed my degree in art history, both of us ambitious young people who shared similar values about family, success, and building something beautiful together. Cameron's architectural firm, Ashworth & Associates, had grown into one of the most respected residential design companies in the region. His custom homes graced the pages of Architectural Digest and House Beautiful, each one a masterpiece of modern elegance combined with functional family living. My own career as a curator for the Metropolitan Arts Foundation allowed me to move in circles that complemented Cameron's professional network, and together we'd built a social life that was both personally satisfying and professionally advantageous. Our marriage had weathered the typical challenges that face ambitious couples: the long hours Cameron spent perfecting his designs, the social obligations that came with my position at the foundation, the delicate balance of raising children while maintaining demanding careers. But we'd navigated these challenges as a team, always communicating openly about our needs and concerns, always prioritizing our family's unity above individual ambitions. The twins had been the perfect completion of our perfect life. Lily inherited Cameron's artistic eye and mathematical precision, spending hours drawing detailed floor plans for imaginary houses. James showed early signs of my love for history and storytelling, creating elaborate narratives about the artwork we displayed throughout our home. Both children were bright, well-adjusted, and genuinely happy, a reflection of the stable, loving environment Cameron and I had worked so hard to create. They adored Elena, often asking if she could join us for family movie nights or special outings, and her presence in their lives had allowed Cameron and me to maintain our careers without sacrificing our children's emotional needs. Our social circle consisted of other successful families who valued education, culture, and discretion. We attended charity galas at the city's finest venues, hosted dinner parties in our formal dining room that could accommodate 20 guests, and vacationed with couples who shared our appreciation for art, fine dining, and meaningful conversation. The Ashworth family was frequently featured in the society pages of Willowbrook magazine, photographed at museum openings, school fundraisers, and cultural events. We were the couple other families looked up to, the ones who seemed to have mastered the art of balancing professional success with genuine family happiness. That Wednesday morning, I was preparing for what should have been one of the happiest weeks of my life. Our 15th anniversary celebration was planned for the upcoming weekend, an intimate dinner party for 30 of our closest friends, followed by a romantic getaway to Paris that Cameron had been planning for months. The invitations had been sent, the catering arranged, and I'd even purchased a stunning new dress for the occasion, a deep blue silk gown that Cameron always said brought out the color of my eyes. Everything in my world was exactly as it should be, perfectly orchestrated and beautifully maintained. I had no idea that while I was planning our anniversary celebration, counting my blessings and feeling grateful for the beautiful life we'd built together, my husband was living an entirely different reality, one that would destroy everything I believed about our marriage, our family, and the man I'd loved and trusted for over half my adult life. The discovery that would change everything was waiting for me in the most innocent of places, and when it arrived, it would reveal a betrayal so comprehensive and calculated that it would take me months to understand its full scope. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. All right, let's get back to it. The discovery that shattered my perfect world came through the most innocent of circumstances: a forgotten lunch, and a mother's loving concern for her children's well-being. Elena had been feeling under the weather for the past week, what she described as a persistent stomach bug that left her nauseated and exhausted. As someone who rarely got sick and always maintained her professional composure, seeing her struggle with fatigue and frequent trips to the bathroom had me genuinely worried about her health. That Wednesday morning, after Cameron left for his meeting with potential clients in the downtown district, I noticed Elena had forgotten her lunch bag on the kitchen counter. She'd been so focused on getting the twins ready for school and out the door on time that she'd left behind the carefully prepared meal she always brought to sustain her through our busy household routine. Elena took tremendous pride in her healthy eating habits, often preparing elaborate salads and protein-rich meals that I secretly envied for their nutritional value and beautiful presentation. Seeing her lunch abandoned on the marble countertop, knowing she was already feeling unwell, sparked my maternal instincts to ensure she was properly cared for. I decided to drive to Maplewood Community Center, where Elena had mentioned she was taking her psychology classes on Wednesday mornings. It was a 20-minute drive through the winding roads that connected our exclusive neighborhood to the more modest area, where working professionals attended continuing education programs. The community center was a modest brick building surrounded by maple trees that were just beginning to show their autumn colors. I'd never been there before, but Elena had described it fondly as a welcoming place where she was pursuing her dream of eventually becoming a child psychologist. I parked near the main entrance and walked through the lobby, expecting to find a reception desk where I could ask someone to deliver Elena's lunch to her classroom. The building had that familiar institutional smell of coffee and industrial cleaning supplies, with bulletin boards covered in announcements for various classes and community events. "Excuse me," I said to the woman behind the information desk, a friendly-looking lady in her 50s with graying hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. "I'm looking for Elena Rodriguez. She's taking psychology classes here on Wednesday mornings, and I wanted to drop off her lunch." The woman looked at me with a puzzled expression, her fingers poised over her computer keyboard as she prepared to search for Elena's information. "Elena Rodriguez?" she repeated, her brow furrowing slightly. "I'm sorry, but I don't see anyone by that name registered for any of our Wednesday morning classes. Are you sure she's taking courses here?" My heart skipped a beat, but I maintained my composure, assuming there must be some simple explanation. Perhaps Elena was registered under a different name. Or maybe she attended a different community center that I had confused with this one. "She's been coming here for several months," I explained, trying to keep my voice casual while a small knot of confusion began forming in my stomach. "She's our nanny, and she mentioned taking psychology courses here on Wednesday mornings. Maybe she's registered under a different name." The receptionist's expression grew more concerned as she pulled up what appeared to be a comprehensive class roster on her computer screen. "Ma'am, I've been working here for 8 years, and I personally know everyone who attends our psychology programs. We only offer those classes on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and I can guarantee that no one matching that description has been enrolled in any of our courses this semester." The words hit me like a physical blow, though I struggled to process their full implications. If Elena wasn't taking classes here, where had she been going every Wednesday morning for the past 6 months? Why would she lie about something so seemingly innocent as continuing her education? "Are you absolutely certain?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Dark hair, usually in a bun, about 26 years old, very sweet and professional? "I'm positive," the receptionist said gently, her tone suggesting she understood that something wasn't right about this situation. "Would you like me to check our records for any other programs she might be enrolled in?" I shook my head, thanking her quietly before walking back to my car in a daze. The September air that had felt crisp and invigorating just minutes earlier now seemed to press against my chest, making it difficult to breathe normally. We're now approaching the story's true conclusion, so stick with us and don't to skip or speed up the story. What happens next is absolutely riveting. Sitting in my car in the community center parking lot, I tried to rationalize what I'd just learned. Maybe Elena had been confused about which community center offered the classes she wanted. Maybe she'd been attending a different location and had simply misspoken when describing her schedule to me. But even as I attempted to create innocent explanations for her deception, a cold certainty was settling in my stomach. Elena had been lying to me about her Wednesday morning activities for months. The question that terrified me was, what else had she been lying about? I drove home slowly, my mind racing through every conversation I'd had with Elena about her classes. Every Wednesday morning when she'd left our house with her backpack and textbooks. Every evening when she'd returned with stories about her professors and fellow students. The lies had been so elaborate, so detailed, so convincing. She'd even shown me textbooks and assignments that I now realized could have been purchased online or borrowed from someone who was actually taking psychology courses. As I pulled into our circular driveway, the beautiful home that had always represented security and happiness suddenly felt foreign and threatening. If Elena had been deceiving me about something as simple as continuing education classes, what other deceptions might be hidden beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect family life? The elegant stone facade of our house, the perfectly maintained gardens, the luxury cars in our driveway, everything looked exactly the same as it had when I'd left to deliver Elena's forgotten lunch. But something fundamental had shifted in my understanding of reality. I sat in my car for several minutes, staring at the carriage house where Elena lived, wondering what secrets might be hidden behind those charming windows and flower boxes that I'd helped her arrange just last month. The woman I'd trusted with my children, welcomed into my family, and considered a dear friend had been systematically lying to me for months. The realization made me feel physically sick, not just because of the deception itself, but because of what it suggested about my ability to judge character and protect my family. As I finally gathered the courage to walk into my house, Elena's forgotten lunch still in my hands, I had no idea that this small lie about community college classes was just the tip of an iceberg that would destroy everything I believed about my marriage, my family, and the people I trusted most in the world. The betrayal I was about to uncover would make Elena's Wednesday morning deception seem trivial by comparison, revealing a web of lies so comprehensive and devastating that it would take me months to fully understand how completely I'd been manipulated by the two people I loved and trusted most. The rest of that Wednesday passed in a haze of forced normalcy while my mind churned with questions I was afraid to answer. When Elena returned from her mysterious morning activities, I watched her with new eyes, studying her face for signs of deception that I'd been too trusting to notice before. "How were your classes today?" I asked casually as she helped me prepare dinner, the same question I'd asked dozens of times over the past months. "Very informative," Elena replied with the same warm smile she always wore, her voice carrying not even the slightest hint of nervousness or guilt. "We're studying child development psychology this week. It's fascinating how much children's behavior is influenced by their sense of security at home." The ease with which she delivered this lie, complete with specific details and a connection to her work with our children, made my stomach turn. Elena wasn't just lying. She was crafting elaborate fictional narratives that demonstrated a level of calculation I'd never suspected she possessed. "That sounds interesting," I managed, my voice sounding strangely hollow to my own ears. "What specific aspects of child development are you focusing on?" Elena launched into a detailed explanation about attachment theory and behavioral patterns that was so convincing and well-informed that I almost began to doubt what I'd learned at the community center. But the receptionist's words echoed in my mind. She personally knew everyone in their psychology programs, and Elena Rodriguez was not among them. That evening, after Cameron returned from his client meetings and we'd shared our usual family dinner, I excused myself to our home office under the pretense of reviewing foundation paperwork. Instead, I sat at my computer and began what would become an investigation that changed everything I thought I knew about my life. I started by searching for Maplewood Community Center's course catalog online, confirming what the receptionist had told me. Psychology classes were indeed offered only on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and their current roster of instructors and course descriptions bore no resemblance to the detailed stories Elena had been sharing with me. But if Elena wasn't attending classes on Wednesday mornings, where was she going? And why create such an elaborate deception about something that seemed so innocent? I began reviewing my memories of the past 6 months with the methodical precision of someone re-examining evidence in a criminal case. Elena's Wednesday morning routine had become so familiar that I'd stopped paying attention to the details, but now those details seemed crucial. She always left the house at 8:30 a.m. after ensuring the twins were safely at school. She carried a professional-looking leather backpack that Cameron and I had given her as a Christmas gift, along with textbooks that I now realized I'd never examined closely. She returned by 2 p.m., always with stories about her professors and fellow students, always enthusiastic about her progress toward her goal of becoming a child psychologist. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how perfectly Elena's deception had been designed to avoid scrutiny. She'd chosen a schedule that didn't interfere with her primary responsibilities to our family. She'd selected a field of study that aligned with her work with our children, making her interest seem natural and beneficial. She'd even shared what appeared to be genuine textbooks and assignments, though I now suspected these were props rather than legitimate coursework. The level of planning required for such sustained deception suggested that Elena's lies about her education were part of something much larger and more serious than a simple desire to appear more academically accomplished. Thursday morning brought a new level of anxiety as I watched Elena prepare for another mysterious Wednesday outing. I made a decision that felt both necessary and terrifying. I was going to follow her. The story is finally reaching its real ending, so please stay with us and watch at normal speed. You won't want to miss what's coming because it gets really interesting from here. The ethical implications of spying on someone I employed and trusted troubled me deeply, but the alternative, continuing to live with the knowledge that Elena was systematically deceiving me, felt impossible to bear. If she was simply attending a different educational program or meeting with friends, I could apologize for my suspicions and work to rebuild trust. But if her deceptions ran deeper, I needed to understand what I was dealing with. Friday morning, I told Cameron I was planning a spa day with some friends from the foundation, a lie that made me feel sick even as I delivered it with the same casual confidence Elena used for her deceptions. I'd never been comfortable with dishonesty, and the fact that I was now employing the same tactics that had been used against me felt like a betrayal of my own values. But as I watched Elena load her backpack with what I now knew were fraudulent textbooks, I understood that protecting my family required me to step outside my comfort zone and learn truths that others were determined to hide from me. Cameron kissed me goodbye with his usual tenderness, reminding me to enjoy my relaxing day and promising to take care of dinner so I could return refreshed. The casual affection in his voice, combined with the genuine concern for my well-being that I heard in his words, made Elena's deception feel even more painful. My husband's obvious love and trust stood in stark contrast to our nanny's calculated lies. After Cameron left for his office and Elena departed for her mysterious Wednesday destination, I waited 10 minutes before getting into my car and driving toward the route I'd seen Elena take on previous Wednesday mornings. Following someone without their knowledge proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. Elena drove a small silver sedan that Cameron and I had helped her purchase when she first joined our family, and tracking it through morning traffic required more attention and skill than I possessed. Several times I nearly lost sight of her car as she navigated through areas of the city I rarely visited. She seemed to be heading toward a residential neighborhood about 30 minutes from our home, an area of modest single-family houses and apartment complexes that catered to young professionals and small families. When Elena finally parked in front of a charming 2-story house with a well-maintained garden and children's toys scattered across the front yard, my confusion deepened. This didn't look like any kind of educational facility or professional meeting location. It looked like someone's home. I parked several houses away and watched as Elena walked up the front path with the familiarity of someone who'd made this journey many times before. She didn't knock or ring the doorbell. Instead, she used what appeared to be her own key to let herself into the house. The implications of what I was witnessing hit me like a physical blow. Elena had a key to this house she entered without announcement or invitation. This wasn't a casual visit or professional appointment. This was someone's home, and Elena clearly had an intimate level of access to it. As I sat in my car staring at the house where my children's nanny had just disappeared with her own key, I realized that her lies about community college classes were just the beginning of a deception so comprehensive that I couldn't yet imagine its full scope. The beautiful house with its child-friendly yard and Elena's obvious familiarity with it suggested possibilities that I was afraid to fully acknowledge. But sitting there in the morning sunlight, watching a home that clearly held secrets about my employees' real life, I understood that my investigation had only just begun. Whatever Elena was hiding behind her Wednesday morning lies was about to reshape everything I thought I knew about the people I trusted with my family's well-being and happiness. Sitting in my car across from that modest house, I felt my hands trembling as the full weight of discovery settled over me. Elena wasn't just lying about classes. She had an entire secret life that I knew nothing about. The key she'd used to enter suggested a level of intimacy and belonging that made my chest tighten with dread. For 45 minutes I remained parked on that quiet residential street, my mind racing through possibilities I didn't want to consider. The neighborhood was peaceful, with mature oak trees lining the sidewalks and the kind of lived-in comfort that spoke of families and long-term residents. Children's bicycles leaned against garage doors, and garden hoses snaked across well-loved lawns. This wasn't the setting for anything sinister or dangerous, which somehow made Elena's presence here even more confusing. If she was involved in something illegal or harmful, I might have expected a seedier location. Instead, this looked like the kind of place where young families started their lives together. At 10:30 a.m., the front door opened and Elena emerged, but she wasn't alone. A man followed her onto the porch, and even from my distant vantage point, I could see the casual intimacy between them. He was tall and dark-haired, probably in his early 30s, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt that suggested he wasn't heading to an office job. What stopped my breath entirely was the way Elena turned to him before leaving, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him goodbye with the comfortable familiarity of a long-established relationship. This wasn't a brief goodbye between friends or casual acquaintances. This was the kiss of two people who knew each other intimately, who had shared countless similar moments, who were comfortable in their physical affection. But the revelation that truly shattered my understanding came next. As Elena walked toward her car, the man called out something I couldn't hear, and she turned back with a laugh that I'd never heard from her before, completely relaxed, genuinely joyful, and utterly unlike the professional warmth she displayed in our home. Then, from inside the house, I heard the unmistakable sound of a child crying. The man disappeared back into the house, and within moments he reappeared holding a toddler who couldn't have been more than 2 years old. The child had Elena's dark hair and what appeared to be her delicate features, though from my distance I couldn't be certain of the resemblance. Elena returned to the porch, and I watched in stunned horror as she took the child into her arms, holding him with the natural ease of someone who'd done so thousands of times before. She kissed the top of his head, said something to the man that made him smile, and then handed the child back before finally walking to her car. As Elena's sedan pulled away from the curb, I sat frozen in my own vehicle, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. Elena had a child. She had a partner. She had an entire family life that she'd hidden from us completely, while living in our carriage house and caring for our children. Now we're reaching the story's actual conclusion. Stay with us and don't skip ahead, because the next part is the most interesting yet. The professional, dedicated nanny we'd welcomed into our family was living a double life, maintaining a secret household with what appeared to be her romantic partner and their child. Every Wednesday morning, when she claimed to be attending psychology classes, she was actually visiting her real family, the family she'd never mentioned during 3 years of working for us. My first instinct was to drive directly home and confront Elena immediately, to demand explanations for the deception that now seemed so much more significant than simple lies about her education. But as I started my car, a different thought stopped me cold. If Elena was capable of maintaining such an elaborate deception about her personal life, what else might she be hiding? The woman I'd trusted with my children's daily care, who had access to our home, our schedules, and our family's most intimate routines, had been systematically lying to us about fundamental aspects of her identity. Instead of returning home, I drove to a nearby coffee shop where I could think clearly about what I'd discovered and what it might mean for my family's safety and security. The cheerful morning bustle of other customers ordering their daily caffeine seemed surreal against the backdrop of my growing anxiety about the stranger who'd been living in our carriage house. I ordered a latte I didn't want and sat in a corner booth, pulling out my phone to begin the kind of investigation I'd never imagined I'd need to conduct about someone we'd welcomed into our family. A basic internet search for Elena Rodriguez psychology student yielded nothing relevant. I tried variations with child psychology and continuing education, but found no trace of Elena's supposed academic pursuits anywhere online. However, when I searched property records for the address where I'd just seen Elena, the results made my blood run cold. The house was owned by someone named David Martinez, and according to public records, Elena Rodriguez was listed as a co-resident who'd been living there for over 4 years. 4 years. Elena had been living with David Martinez for 4 years, which meant their relationship had begun before she'd ever come to work for our family. She'd been in a committed relationship, possibly even married, when she'd interviewed for the nanny position and convinced us she was a single woman dedicated to building her career in childcare. The background check we'd conducted before hiring Elena had verified her previous employment and confirmed she had no criminal record, but we'd never investigated her personal relationships or living situations. Why would we? She'd presented herself as a single woman looking for stable employment that would allow her to pursue her educational goals while gaining experience with children. Every conversation we'd had about her future plans, her dreams of becoming a child psychologist, her occasional mentions of missing her family in Costa Rica, all of it had been carefully constructed fiction, designed to maintain the illusion that we understood who she really was. As I sat in that coffee shop scrolling through public records and social media profiles, a horrifying thought began to take shape. If Elena had been lying about her relationship status, her living situation, and her educational pursuits, what guarantee did I have that anything she'd told us about her background was true? The woman we'd entrusted with our children's safety might be someone entirely different from who she'd claimed to be. The references she'd provided, the stories about her previous employers, even her stated reasons for wanting to work in childcare. Any or all of it could have been fabricated. My phone buzzed with a text message from Elena. "Hi Valentina, just wanted to let you know I'll be a bit late getting back this afternoon. My professor asked me to stay after class to discuss my research project. Should be home by 3 p.m. instead of 2 o'clock. Hope that's okay." Reading her message, delivered with the same cheerful professionalism she'd maintained for 3 years, I felt physically sick. Elena was still lying to me, still maintaining the fiction about her classes, even after I'd discovered her secret family. The casual ease with which she continued the deception suggested that lying to my face had become so natural for her that she felt no anxiety or guilt about it whatsoever. This wasn't someone who'd been caught up in a small lie that had grown out of control. This was someone who was comfortable living multiple lives simultaneously. As I drove home from the coffee shop, my mind raced with questions that I was afraid to answer. If Elena had a secret family, if she'd been lying about fundamental aspects of her identity, what did that mean for the safety of my own children? What kind of person was capable of such sustained deception while working intimately with a family? Most terrifyingly, if Elena was hiding such significant secrets, what role might Cameron play in her ability to maintain such an elaborate double life? The thought tried to surface in my consciousness, but I pushed it away, not ready to consider possibilities that would destroy everything I believed about my marriage and my husband's character. The drive home from the coffee shop felt like moving through a dream where familiar landmarks had taken on sinister new meanings. Every tree-lined street in our neighborhood, every elegant home that had once represented security and success, now seemed to mock my naivete about the people I'd welcomed into my family's most intimate spaces. As I pulled into our circular driveway, I made a decision that went against every instinct I'd developed over 15 years of marriage. Instead of immediately confronting Elena or discussing my discoveries with Cameron, I was going to investigate further before revealing what I knew. The depth of Elena's deception suggested that whatever was happening in my household was far more complex than simple lies about continuing education. I needed professional help, but I also needed to be strategic about how I proceeded. If Elena was capable of maintaining such an elaborate double life for 3 years, I couldn't assume that Cameron was unaware of her deceptions. The thought made me feel physically ill, but I forced myself to consider the possibility that my husband might know more about our nanny's secret family than he'd ever let on. That afternoon, I drove to the offices of Thornfield Investigations, a discreet private investigation firm that handled sensitive matters for wealthy families in our social circle. I had learned about them through my work at the foundation, where we occasionally needed to verify the backgrounds of major donors or investigate potential fraud involving charitable contributions. The office was located in a professional building that could have housed any number of legitimate businesses, accounting firms, legal practices, consulting companies. Nothing about the exterior suggested that inside, investigators helped people uncover the kinds of secrets that could destroy families and marriages. Rebecca Thornfield was a woman in her mid-40s, with the kind of calm professionalism that immediately put me at ease. She'd built her reputation handling delicate situations for clients who needed answers but couldn't afford public scandals or media attention. "Mrs. Ashworth," she said as we sat in her understated office, "I want you to understand that once we begin investigating someone in your household, we often uncover information that clients wish they'd never learned. Are you prepared for the possibility that what we discover might be worse than what you already suspect?" Her question hung in the air between us like a warning that I couldn't bring myself to fully acknowledge. I'd come to her office hoping to confirm that Elena's deceptions were limited to her personal life and didn't pose any danger to my family. But Rebecca's experience with these situations clearly suggested that such optimism might be misplaced. "I need to know the truth," I replied, though my voice carried less conviction than I'd hoped. "My children's safety might depend on understanding who Elena Rodriguez really is, and what she's been hiding from us." Rebecca nodded, making notes as I described Elena's employment with our family, her apparent lies about her education, and my discovery of her secret relationship and child. I provided her with Elena's full name, the address where I'd seen her that morning, and permission to conduct whatever investigation was necessary to uncover the truth. "I'll need you to be very careful about your behavior around Elena over the next few days," Rebecca warned me. "If she suspects that you've discovered her deceptions, she might alter her patterns or take steps to cover her tracks. Can you maintain normal interactions with her while we investigate?" The thought of pretending everything was normal while Elena continued caring for my children made my stomach turn, but I understood the necessity. If Elena was hiding something dangerous, confronting her prematurely might put my family at greater risk than allowing the deception to continue while we gathered information. That evening, Cameron returned from his office with the same warm enthusiasm he'd shown every day for 15 years. He kissed me hello, asked about my day, and shared stories about his current architectural projects with the genuine excitement that had always made me proud to be married to such a passionate, creative man. Watching him interact with the twins during dinner, helping James with his math homework while discussing Lily's art project, I found it almost impossible to believe that this loving, attentive father might be hiding knowledge of Elena's secret life. But Elena's ability to maintain her professional facade while living an entirely different reality had taught me that people could be far more deceptive than I'd ever imagined possible. If she could lie to my face for 3 years while maintaining such a convincing performance, what guarantee did I have that Cameron's apparent ignorance of her deceptions was genuine? When Elena joined us for dinner that evening, as she often did when Cameron and I weren't entertaining clients, I watched her interactions with our family with new eyes. She helped Lily practice her Spanish vocabulary, praised James for his improved handwriting, and engaged in casual conversation about weekend plans and upcoming school events. Her performance was flawless, warm, professional, genuinely caring about our children's development and happiness. If I hadn't seen her with her own child that morning, if I hadn't discovered her secret family, I would never have suspected that the woman sitting at our dinner table was anyone other than the dedicated nanny we'd grown to trust and appreciate. The ease with which Elena maintained her deception while sharing a meal with the family she was systematically lying to demonstrated a level of psychological sophistication that I found deeply disturbing. This wasn't someone who'd been caught up in a small lie that had grown beyond her control. This was someone who was comfortable living multiple identities simultaneously. After dinner, when Elena had retreated to her carriage house and Cameron was in his study reviewing blueprints, I sat in our living room trying to reconcile what I knew about Elena's secret life with the woman who'd been caring for my children. The Elena who lived with David Martinez and their child was someone I'd never met, relaxed, affectionate, genuinely happy in ways that seemed utterly different from her professional demeanor in our home. The kiss I'd witnessed, the easy intimacy with which she'd held her child, the comfortable familiarity she'd shown with that house. All of it suggested a person who was fully herself only when she was away from our family. Which meant that the Elena we knew, the woman we'd welcomed into our home and entrusted with our children's daily care, was essentially a character she was playing rather than her authentic self. The psychological implications were staggering. What kind of person was capable of maintaining such a complete separation between their public and private identities? What did it mean for my children's emotional development that they'd formed deep attachments to someone who was essentially performing a role rather than being genuine with them? More frightening still was the question of motivation. Why would Elena choose to live such a complicated double life? If she had a partner and child who clearly brought her genuine happiness, why maintain employment that required her to hide fundamental aspects of her identity? The most obvious explanation, that she needed our income to support her real family, raised additional questions about what Elena might be willing to do to protect her secret life and continued employment with us. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized that discovering Elena's deception had fundamentally changed my relationship not only with her but with my own family. I could no longer take anyone's honesty for granted, and I could no longer assume that the people closest to me were who they claimed to be. The investigation I'd set in motion would either restore my faith in my family's security or reveal deceptions that would destroy everything I'd believed about the people I loved most. Either way, the woman who went to sleep that night was already different from the one who'd awakened that morning, believing her biggest concern was planning an anniversary celebration. Now we're reaching the story's actual conclusion. Stay with us and don't skip ahead, because the next part is the most interesting yet. Rebecca Thornfield called me 3 days later with preliminary findings that transformed my growing suspicions into a nightmare that I could never have imagined. Her voice carried the careful neutrality of someone who'd delivered devastating news to clients many times before, but I could hear an underlying tension that suggested even she was disturbed by what her investigation had uncovered. "Mrs. Ashworth, I need you to come to my office immediately," she said. "What we've discovered about Elena Rodriguez goes far beyond personal deception. This is a situation that requires immediate intervention, and we need to discuss your family's safety as well as your legal options." The 40-minute drive to Rebecca's office felt like traveling through a landscape that had become suddenly foreign and threatening. Every familiar landmark, the shopping center where I bought the children's school supplies, the park where our family had enjoyed countless weekend picnics, the tree-lined streets that had always represented peace and prosperity, now seemed to mock my previous sense of security. Rebecca's expression when I entered her office confirmed my worst fears. She gestured for me to sit across from her desk, where several thick folders waited alongside what appeared to be surveillance photographs and legal documents. "Elena Rodriguez is not her real name," Rebecca began without preamble. "The woman working in your home is actually Elena Vasquez, and she has a history that your family needs to understand immediately." She opened the first folder, revealing documentation that made my hands shake as I tried to process its implications. Elena's real identity, her employment history, her criminal background, everything we thought we knew about our nanny had been fabricated. Elena Vasquez was previously employed by the Morrison family in Greenwich, Connecticut, where she worked as a live-in nanny for 18 months. Her employment ended abruptly when Mrs. Morrison discovered that Elena was having an affair with her husband, Robert Morrison. The affair had been ongoing for over a year and resulted in Elena becoming pregnant with Mr. Morrison's child. The words hit me like physical blows. Elena's secret child wasn't the product of a hidden relationship with David Martinez. The toddler I'd seen her holding with such maternal tenderness was the biological child of her former employer, a man whose wife had trusted Elena with their family just as I had trusted her with mine. The Morrison family paid Elena a substantial settlement to leave quietly and avoid a public scandal that would have destroyed Robert Morrison's political career, Rebecca continued. Part of that settlement included a legal agreement requiring Elena to change her identity and never contact the Morrison family again. My mind raced to process the full implications of what Rebecca was telling me. Elena hadn't just been hiding a secret relationship. She'd been hiding the fact that she was a proven predator who targeted married men and families where she worked as a nanny. The professional references she'd provided, the background check that had seemed to verify her character, all of it had been part of an elaborate deception designed to gain access to another vulnerable family. David Martinez is Elena's brother, Rebecca explained, opening another folder. He's been helping her maintain the deception by providing an address and supporting her false identity. The house where you saw them together belongs to him, and he's been caring for Elena's child while she works for your family. The casual intimacy I'd witnessed between Elena and David suddenly made horrifying sense. The kiss I'd seen wasn't between romantic partners. It was the grateful affection of a sister whose brother was helping her hide her child while she pursued another married father. Mrs. Ashworth, I need to ask you some very direct questions about your husband's relationship with Elena, Rebecca said, her voice gentle but insistent. Have you noticed any changes in Cameron's behavior since Elena joined your household? Any alterations in his schedule, his emotional state, or his interactions with the family? The question I'd been avoiding for days suddenly demanded an honest answer. As I sat in Rebecca's office, surrounded by evidence of Elena's calculated deception and predatory history, I forced myself to review the past 3 years of my marriage with the objectivity of someone examining evidence rather than cherishing memories. Cameron had changed since Elena joined our family, though the alterations had been so gradual and seemingly positive that I'd attributed them to natural evolution in our marriage. He'd become more attentive to the children's daily routines, more involved in their school activities, more present during family time that had previously been Elena's primary responsibility. But he'd also begun working late more frequently, claiming new projects that required evening meetings and weekend consultations. He'd started taking business trips that seemed to coincide with Elena's days off, and he'd suggested that we give Elena more autonomy in managing the children's schedules and activities. I said slowly, the words feeling like stones in my throat, I think my husband might be having an affair with our nanny. Rebecca nodded with the grim satisfaction of someone whose suspicions had been confirmed. She opened the final folder on her desk, revealing surveillance photographs that destroyed any remaining illusions I might have had about my marriage. The images showed Cameron and Elena in various locations around the city, intimate dinners at restaurants I didn't recognize, entering a downtown hotel together, sitting in his car in secluded parking lots with their heads close together in conversation. The timestamps indicated these meetings had been occurring regularly for at least 8 months. But the photograph that completely shattered my world showed Cameron and Elena with her child. The little boy I now knew was fathered by Elena's previous employer. They were in a park I didn't recognize, and Cameron was pushing the toddler on a swing while Elena watched with the kind of maternal pride I'd only seen her display in our carriage house. Cameron knew about Elena's secret child. More than that, he was actively participating in caring for the child, creating the kind of family moments with Elena that he should have been sharing with me and our twins. The pattern is identical to what happened with the Morrison family, Rebecca explained. Elena targets successful married men who employ her as a nanny. She gradually insinuates herself into their personal lives, creates emotional intimacy through shared concern for the children, and eventually initiates a sexual relationship. The fact that she already has a child from a previous affair makes her particularly dangerous, because she's proven that she's willing to destroy families to get what she wants. The methodical nature of Elena's predatory behavior was almost more disturbing than the affair itself. This wasn't a spontaneous attraction or an emotional connection that had developed unexpectedly. Elena had deliberately chosen our family as her next target, using proven techniques to seduce my husband while maintaining the trust and admiration of his wife. Mrs. Ashworth, there's something else you need to know, Rebecca said, her voice carrying a note of urgency that made my already racing heart beat even faster. Elena is 3 months pregnant. The room seemed to spin around me as the full implications of Rebecca's words sank in. Elena wasn't just having an affair with my husband. She was carrying his child. Just as she had with Robert Morrison, Elena had gotten pregnant by her employer, creating a permanent connection that would bind Cameron to her regardless of what happened to our marriage. The pregnancy explained Elena's recent fatigue and nausea, symptoms I'd attributed to a stomach bug while worrying about her health and encouraging her to rest. I'd been caring for the woman who was carrying my husband's child, showing maternal concern for someone who was systematically destroying my family. Cameron doesn't know about the pregnancy yet, Rebecca continued. Our surveillance suggests that Elena is waiting for the right moment to tell him, probably after your anniversary celebration this weekend. She's likely planning to use the pregnancy to force Cameron to leave you and legitimize their relationship. As I sat in Rebecca's office, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal and our nanny's calculated destruction of my family, I understood that the woman who had walked into that building an hour earlier no longer existed. The trusting wife who had spent 3 years welcoming Elena into her home, the naive mother who had been grateful for the professional care Elena provided her children, the secure woman who had been planning an anniversary celebration, she was gone forever. In her place was someone harder, more calculating, and absolutely determined to protect what remained of her family while ensuring that Elena Vasquez faced consequences for her predatory behavior. The investigation had given me the truth I'd thought I wanted, but it had also given me something more valuable, the information I needed to fight back. Elena had made one crucial mistake in choosing my family as her next target. Unlike Robert Morrison's wife, I wasn't going to pay for Elena's silence, or allow her to disappear quietly with a financial settlement. This time, Elena had chosen to destroy the wrong family, and I was going to make sure she regretted that decision for the rest of her life. The revelation about Elena's pregnancy created an urgency that transformed my shock into crystalline focus. I had less than 4 days before our anniversary celebration, the event where Elena would likely reveal her pregnancy to Cameron and force him to choose between his family and his pregnant mistress. The timeline gave me a narrow window to gather additional evidence and prepare my counterattack. Rebecca's investigation had provided me with Elena's true identity and criminal pattern, but I needed more than just proof of her deception. I needed leverage that would protect my children and ensure that Elena faced meaningful consequences for her predatory behavior, rather than simply moving on to destroy another family. I want to hire you for a more comprehensive investigation, I told Rebecca, my voice steadier than I'd expected. I need everything. Financial records, communications between Cameron and Elena, evidence of how long this has been planned, and most importantly, I need to understand what legal options I have. Rebecca nodded approvingly. Mrs. Ashworth, I'm going to recommend that you also consult with Patricia Whitman at Whitman & Associates. She specializes in high-stakes divorce cases involving infidelity and child custody issues. Given Elena's pregnancy and her history of targeting families, you'll need aggressive legal representation. That afternoon, I met with Patricia Whitman in her intimidating downtown office that overlooked the city's financial district. Patricia was exactly the kind of attorney I needed, ruthlessly intelligent, strategically minded, and completely unimpressed by wealth or social status. Her reputation for destroying cheating spouses in court was legendary among Chicago's elite families. Now we're reaching the story's actual conclusion. Stay with us and don't skip ahead because the next part is the most interesting yet. Valentina, Patricia said after reviewing Rebecca's preliminary findings, your husband and Elena have made several critical mistakes that we can exploit. The fact that Elena used false identity documents to gain employment in your home constitutes fraud. Her pregnancy by a married employer, combined with her previous pattern of behavior, establishes her as a professional homewrecker who targets families for financial gain. Patricia's analysis was methodical and devastating. Elena's use of fraudulent references and false identity to secure employment violated multiple state and federal laws. Her affair with Cameron while employed in our home created liability issues for both of them, Most crucially, her pregnancy established a permanent financial connection that would affect any divorce settlement. However, Patricia continued, we need to be strategic about timing and evidence gathering. If we move too quickly, Cameron and Elena might destroy evidence or take steps to minimize your legal recourse. I'm going to recommend a coordinated approach that maximizes your protection while ensuring they face appropriate consequences. The strategy Patricia outlined was more sophisticated than anything I could have developed on my own. Rather than immediately confronting Cameron or Elena, we would spend the next several days gathering additional evidence while positioning me to control the narrative when their affair was finally exposed. Rebecca's investigators will document their communications and financial transactions while I prepare the legal framework for asset protection and custody arrangements, Patricia explained. When we're ready to act, Elena and Cameron will discover that their affair has cost them far more than they ever anticipated. That evening, I returned home to find Elena helping the twins with their homework while Cameron worked in his study, exactly the domestic scene that had been my reality for 3 years. But now I understood that this peaceful family tableau was actually an elaborate performance designed to hide the systematic destruction of my marriage. Watching Elena patiently explain long division to James while pregnant with my husband's child required every ounce of self-control I possessed. Her gentle encouragement, her genuine concern for his academic progress, her maternal warmth, all of it was authentic, which somehow made her betrayal even more disturbing. Elena wasn't a cold, calculating predator who felt nothing for the family she destroyed. She was someone who could genuinely care for my children, while simultaneously seducing their father and planning to tear apart their home. The complexity of her emotional capacity made her far more dangerous than a simple gold digger or opportunist. "Mommy, are you feeling okay?" Lily asked during dinner, her perceptive 8-year-old eyes noting something different in my demeanor despite my efforts to maintain normalcy. "Just tired, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile while Cameron and Elena exchanged what I now recognized as a meaningful glance across our dining room table. Planning the anniversary party has been more work than I expected. The anniversary celebration that I'd been anticipating for months now felt like a macabre theater production, where I was the only person unaware that the script had been rewritten. Cameron's enthusiasm for the event, which I'd interpreted as romantic excitement about celebrating our marriage, was probably nervousness about Elena's planned pregnancy revelation. After dinner, when Elena had returned to her carriage house and Cameron was reviewing architectural plans, I made a decision that felt both necessary and terrifying. I was going to search Cameron's personal belongings for evidence of his affair, not because I needed additional proof of their relationship, but because I needed to understand the scope of their plans for our family's future. Cameron's study was his private sanctuary, filled with architectural awards, design books, and the drafting equipment he'd used throughout his career. I'd always respected his need for professional space and rarely entered without invitation, which now seemed naively trusting given what Elena had been hiding in plain sight. His laptop was password protected, but after 15 years of marriage, I knew Cameron's patterns well enough to guess his access codes. The password that unlocked his computer was Lily James 2015 inches, the year our twins were born, which made accessing his betrayal feel like an additional violation of our family's sacred moments. What I discovered in Cameron's email and text messages was worse than I'd expected. The affair hadn't developed gradually over months of professional interaction. Elena had begun seducing Cameron within weeks of joining our household, using sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques that suggested she'd refined her approach through previous experiences. The earliest messages between them showed Elena expressing concern about the children's emotional needs, gradually positioning herself as someone who understood Cameron's parental anxieties better than his wife did. She'd created artificial crises that required Cameron's input, then praised his insight and decision-making in ways that fed his ego, while making him feel uniquely appreciated. "Valentina is so lucky to have such an involved father for the twins," one early email read. Most of the fathers I've worked for leave all the parenting decisions to their wives. But you really understand what children need for emotional security. The progression from professional consultation to personal intimacy was documented in hundreds of messages that showed Elena's calculated approach to seducing married men. She'd identified Cameron's insecurities about balancing his career with fatherhood, then positioned herself as the solution to problems she'd helped create. But the most devastating discovery was a recent email exchange about their future together. Cameron and Elena had been planning their life after my marriage ended, discussing everything from custody arrangements for the twins to financial strategies for supporting Elena's growing family. Once Valentina understands that our marriage is over, we can focus on building the family we really want, Cameron had written. The twins love you already, and they'll adjust to having a new baby brother or sister. Elena, you've given me a happiness I never thought possible. Reading my husband's casual dismissal of our 15-year marriage while planning his future with our pregnant nanny was like discovering that my entire adult life had been a lie. The man I'd loved, trusted, and built a family with was already mentally divorced from me while sleeping in our bed and sharing meals at our table. The email exchanges revealed that Cameron and Elena planned to announce their relationship immediately after our anniversary celebration, using the party as Cameron's farewell to our old life before beginning his new one. They'd even discussed having Elena move out of the carriage house and into a rental property where Cameron could visit more openly while we worked out divorce and custody arrangements. As I sat in Cameron's study reading his enthusiastic plans for abandoning our family, I realized that the anniversary celebration I'd been planning as a romantic milestone was actually intended as my public humiliation. Elena would announce her pregnancy at the party, Cameron would declare his love for her, and I would be expected to gracefully accept the destruction of my marriage in front of our closest friends and family. But Cameron and Elena had made a critical mistake in their planning. They'd assumed that I would react to their betrayal with the same passive acceptance that had characterized my response to their deception over the past 3 years. They expected the trusting, dependent wife who'd never questioned Elena's lies or suspected Cameron's growing distance. Instead, they were about to discover that their affair had created someone far more dangerous than they'd anticipated, a woman with nothing left to lose and every reason to fight for her children's future. The final phase of my preparation began 48 hours before our anniversary celebration, when Rebecca's surveillance team provided me with the last pieces of evidence I needed to destroy Cameron and Elena's carefully constructed plans. The information was so damning that even Patricia, who'd handled hundreds of high-profile divorce cases, seemed shocked by the scope of their deception. Valentina, they've been planning this for over a year, Patricia told me during our emergency meeting. Elena didn't just seduce your husband. She's been systematically positioning herself to take over your entire life. The evidence Rebecca's team had gathered revealed a conspiracy that went far beyond a simple extramarital affair. Elena and Cameron had been conducting their relationship with the methodical precision of people executing a hostile takeover, not lovers caught up in passion. Financial records showed that Cameron had been secretly transferring money from our joint accounts into a private account he'd established for Elena's use. Over the past 8 months, he'd moved nearly $200,000 of our family's assets to fund Elena's living expenses, medical care for her pregnancy, and preparations for their life together after our divorce. But the most disturbing discovery was a series of communications between Elena and her brother David that revealed the true scope of their criminal enterprise. Elena wasn't just a predatory nanny who seduced married fathers. She was part of a sophisticated operation that targeted wealthy families for systematic financial exploitation. Elena and David have been running this scheme for at least 5 years, Rebecca explained, showing me evidence that made my hands shake. They identify families with substantial assets, then Elena gains employment as a nanny, while David researches the family's financial situation and social connections. The pattern was horrifyingly consistent across multiple families. Elena would seduce the husband while gathering intelligence about family assets, business interests, and social vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, David would conduct background research that helped them identify the most effective ways to maximize their financial gain from each situation. The Morrison family in Connecticut hadn't just paid Elena to leave quietly. They'd been systematically blackmailed for over 2 years after her initial departure. Elena and David had collected compromising photographs, recorded conversations, and detailed financial information that they'd used to extort ongoing payments from Robert Morrison's political career and family reputation. "Mrs. Ashworth, your family was never Elena's endgame," Patricia explained with grim certainty. "Based on the communications we've intercepted, Elena and Cameron are planning to use your divorce settlement and his access to your social circle to target other wealthy families in your community. The revelation that Cameron wasn't just betraying our marriage but actively participating in a criminal conspiracy that would endanger our friends and neighbors transformed my anger into something far more focused and dangerous. Elena hadn't just seduced my husband. She'd recruited him as a partner in predatory schemes that would destroy innocent families. Evidence showed that Cameron had already begun providing Elena with confidential information about his architectural clients, including details about their home security systems, family schedules, and financial situations. His professional relationships and access to wealthy families' private spaces made him an invaluable asset to Elena's criminal operation. They're planning to continue this pattern indefinitely, Rebecca continued, opening a file that contained their communications about future targets. Cameron's reputation and social connections provide cover for Elena to access families that would never employ someone with her actual background. The scope of their planned criminal enterprise was staggering. They'd identified at least 12 families in our social circle as potential targets, including several of my closest friends who trusted Cameron's professional expertise and would welcome his recommendations for childcare or household staff. After this, now we're reaching the story's actual conclusion. Stay with us and don't skip ahead, because the next part is the most interesting yet. But Elena and Cameron had made one crucial error in their planning. They'd underestimated my intelligence and resources. While they'd been focused on executing their conspiracy, I'd been building a case that would destroy both of their futures and protect every family they'd planned to victimize. "Patricia, I want them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law," I said, my voice carrying a coldness that surprised even me. "Not just for what they've done to my family, but for what they plan to do to others." The legal strategy Patricia outlined was more comprehensive than anything I could have imagined. Elena would face charges for identity fraud, criminal conspiracy, extortion, and child endangerment. Cameron would be prosecuted for embezzlement, conspiracy, and professional misconduct that would destroy his architectural license and career. But the criminal charges were only the beginning. Patricia had also prepared civil litigation that would strip Cameron of his assets, while ensuring that Elena faced financial consequences that would prevent her from targeting other families. The beauty of their own planning is that it provides perfect evidence of premeditation, Patricia explained. Every email they exchanged, every financial transaction they conducted, every family they researched, all of it demonstrates a criminal conspiracy that went far beyond personal infidelity. 2 days before our anniversary celebration, I received the final piece of evidence that would ensure Elena's complete destruction. Rebecca's team had obtained recordings of Elena's phone conversations with David, where she discussed her pregnancy and their plans for extracting maximum financial benefit from Cameron's divorce. "Once Cameron's divorce is final and I have the baby, we'll have permanent leverage over him," Elena's voice was clear on the recording. "He'll pay whatever we demand to avoid custody battles and protect his relationship with his children. Plus, his connections in the architectural community will give us access to dozens of other wealthy families." Listening to Elena discuss my children as leverage in her criminal schemes while planning to exploit Cameron's love for his new baby made me understand that I wasn't just fighting for my marriage. I was fighting to protect innocent people from predators who viewed families as profit opportunities. The woman who'd played with my children, shared meals at my table, and lived in my home for 3 years had been calculating how to destroy my life since the day she'd arrived. Every moment of apparent warmth, every display of genuine care for the twins, every professional interaction had been part of an elaborate performance designed to facilitate the systematic destruction of my family. But Elena's greatest miscalculation was assuming that the naive, trusting woman she'd been manipulating for 3 years would remain passive when confronted with betrayal. The Valentina who'd hired Elena Rodriguez as a nanny no longer existed. In her place was someone who understood exactly how dangerous Elena was, and who possessed the resources and determination to ensure she never had the opportunity to destroy another family. As I finalized my preparations for the anniversary celebration that Elena and Cameron planned to use for my public humiliation, I felt something I hadn't experienced since discovering Elena's lies: genuine excitement about the future. Not because I was looking forward to the party, but because I knew that by the end of the evening Elena Vasquez would discover that she'd finally chosen the wrong family to target. The elaborate trap I'd been constructing over the past week was about to spring, and Elena would learn that some wives don't just fight back, they fight to win. After this, at the end, now we're reaching the story's actual conclusion. Stay with us and don't skip ahead because the next part is the most interesting yet. The evening of our 15th anniversary celebration arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that would have filled me with joy just 2 weeks earlier. Now, as I prepared for what Cameron and Elena believed would be my public humiliation, I felt the calm focus of someone who'd spent days preparing for battle. Our home had been transformed into an elegant party venue, with caterers arranging tables on our back terrace and florists creating centerpieces that would have photographed beautifully for the society pages. 30 of our closest friends and family members would soon arrive to celebrate what they believed was a milestone in a successful marriage. I had chosen my outfit with strategic precision, a stunning emerald green dress that Cameron had always said was his favorite, paired with the diamond necklace he'd given me for our 10th anniversary. I wanted to look absolutely radiant when Elena and Cameron's world collapsed around them. Elena had spent the afternoon helping coordinate the party preparations, her pregnancy barely showing beneath her elegant black dress. She moved through our home with the comfortable familiarity of someone who believed she would soon be its mistress, directing caterers and adjusting decorations with proprietary confidence. "Mrs. Ashworth, you look absolutely beautiful tonight," Elena said as the first guests began arriving. "Cameron is so lucky to have such an elegant wife." The casual cruelty of her compliment, delivered while she was carrying my husband's child and planning to destroy my marriage in front of our friends, demonstrated a level of psychological sophistication that still took my breath away. Elena wasn't just destroying my family, she was enjoying the process. Cameron appeared beside us, devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, and placed his hand on the small of my back with the practiced affection of a devoted husband. "Darling, you're absolutely glowing tonight," he said, kissing my cheek while Elena watched with barely concealed satisfaction. I smiled graciously and accepted his kiss, knowing that this would be one of the last moments of physical contact we'd ever share. In less than 2 hours, Cameron would discover that his loving wife had been gathering evidence of his criminal conspiracy while he'd been planning her public humiliation. Our guests arrived throughout the evening. Successful couples from our social circle, family members who'd traveled for the celebration, business associates who'd helped build Cameron's architectural reputation. Everyone who mattered in our world was present to witness what Cameron and Elena believed would be their triumph. The dinner conversation flowed smoothly, with toasts celebrating our marriage and stories about our early years together that now felt like they belonged to different people. I played my role perfectly, accepting congratulations and sharing memories with the gracious warmth that had always made me a popular hostess. But I was also watching Cameron and Elena, noting the meaningful glances they exchanged and the subtle signs of their barely contained excitement about their planned announcement. Elena kept touching her still flat stomach in a gesture that I now recognized as anticipation rather than nausea. As dessert was being served, Cameron stood to offer what our guests expected would be a romantic toast to our enduring marriage. This was Elena's moment, the signal for her to reveal her pregnancy and announce their relationship to our assembled friends and family. Friends, family, thank you all for celebrating this special milestone with Valentina and me, Cameron began, his voice carrying the confident charm that had always made him compelling in professional and social situations. 15 years ago, I married the most beautiful, intelligent, and trusting woman I'd ever met. The emphasis he placed on trusting made Elena smile with anticipation. In Cameron's script, this was where he would reveal how that trust had been misplaced and announce his new relationship with the woman who truly understood him. But I stood before Cameron could continue, raising my champagne glass with the serene confidence of someone who controlled the evening's narrative. Before Cameron continues, I said, my voice carrying clearly across our terrace, I have my own announcement to make. I want to share some wonderful news about Elena, our children's beloved nanny. Elena's face went pale as she realized that something was going wrong with their carefully planned script. Cameron's expression shifted from confidence to confusion as he struggled to understand why I was speaking instead of listening to his prepared revelation. Elena has been keeping a secret from all of us, I continued, still smiling warmly as our guests focused their attention on our nanny. She's been working so hard to provide for her family that she forgot to mention she already has a beautiful 2-year-old son. The shocked murmur that rippled through our guests was exactly what I'd anticipated. Elena's carefully maintained facade as a single, dedicated professional was crumbling in real time as our friends tried to process this unexpected information. But that's not the most exciting news, I continued, my voice never losing its gracious warmth. Elena is also pregnant with her second child. The father is someone we all know very well. Elena tried to stand, probably to flee or interrupt my speech, but the 2 federal agents who'd been posing as catering staff were already moving toward our table. Rebecca's coordination with law enforcement had been flawless. Elena would be arrested before she could escape or destroy evidence. Cameron, would you like to tell our friends about your relationship with Elena? I asked, my voice still carrying the same hostess warmth I'd used throughout the evening. Or shall I explain how our nanny has been running a criminal enterprise that targets wealthy families for exploitation? The silence that followed was deafening. 30 of the most socially prominent people in our community sat frozen as they processed the implications of what I'd just revealed. Cameron's face had gone from confusion to horror as he realized that his wife knew everything. Elena Vasquez, one of the federal agents, announced, approaching our table with handcuffs. You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, extortion, and identity theft. As Elena was led away in handcuffs, her elegant black dress and carefully styled hair making her arrest seem surreal against our elegant party setting, I turned to address our guests with the same gracious composure I'd maintained throughout the evening. I apologize that our anniversary celebration has taken such an unexpected turn, I said, as Cameron sat stunned in his chair. But I wanted you all to understand why this marriage is ending and why Elena will no longer be working with families in our community. The second federal agent approached Cameron with additional charges related to his financial crimes and conspiracy with Elena's criminal operation. As my husband was also handcuffed and read his rights in front of our closest friends, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks: genuine peace. The party will continue, I announced to our guests, many of whom were still processing the dramatic turn of events. The catering is paid for, the music is lovely, and I see no reason why Elena and Cameron's criminal behavior should ruin a perfectly good evening. What followed was perhaps the most unusual anniversary celebration in our social circle's history. As word spread about Elena's arrest and the criminal conspiracy she'd been running, our guests transformed from shocked spectators into a supportive community rallying around someone who'd exposed dangerous predators in their midst. Patricia Whitman arrived as the arrests were concluding, carrying legal documents that would freeze Cameron's assets and establish emergency custody arrangements for the twins. The criminal charges against both Cameron and Elena ensured that neither would have access to our children while their cases proceeded through the courts. As the evening wound down and our guests gradually departed, many stopping to express their admiration for my courage in exposing Elena's criminal operation, I stood on our terrace surveying the remnants of what had been intended as my public humiliation. The woman who'd discovered Elena's lies 2 weeks earlier had been naive, trusting, and completely unprepared for the betrayal she'd uncovered. The woman who stood in her place was someone I was only beginning to understand. Intelligent, strategic, and absolutely committed to protecting her children and community from predators who viewed families as profit opportunities. Elena and Cameron had spent months planning my destruction, assuming that the dependent wife they'd been manipulating would collapse when confronted with their betrayal. Instead, their crimes had created someone far more dangerous than they'd ever anticipated, a woman who understood exactly how to fight and who possessed the resources to win. As I prepared for bed in a house that was finally free of deception and betrayal, I felt something I hadn't experienced since childhood: complete confidence in my ability to handle whatever challenges lay ahead. The perfect life had been built on lies, but the real life I was creating would be built on truth, strength, and an unshakable determination to protect the people I loved. The anniversary celebration had ended exactly as I'd planned, but my new life was just beginning. Coming up next, you'll see 2 more stories we handpicked just for you. If this one struck a chord, you're going to love what's next. Tap to keep the journey going.